Greetings and salutations. You are listening to the Into the North podcast, where we take a look at the competitive side of the Commander format, also known as CDH. I'm one of your hosts, Lyndon, aka Noobsource, and today I'm joined by my co-hosts, Reed, aka Sick Robot.
Hey, what's up?
And Morgan, aka Spleenface.
How's it going, everyone?
And in this episode, we'll be covering Ghosts of Decks Past. Ooh, spooky.
I was hoping that would come up with a better one before we actually got into the episode. But this is like Morgan watched me workshopping this title in real time, and I couldn't quite get there. So
The struggle was-
if the YouTube episode or like the episode title on all the streaming services and such ends up being different from what we just said, I wouldn't be surprised.
Okay, so what exactly? I mean, what you workshopping the title? Well, what is the episode about?
I mean, you had the topic.
I did read the topic. Okay,
but
you go for it.
It's so we're each going to be going over. And you know what? Well, I gotta give full attribution for this one. This is
From friend of the show.
Thanks to
Tim,
Tim, friend of the show. That's Tim, first name, friend of the show, last name. Who recommended the a topic of talking through a few decks that each of us have sort of played in the past, but are sort of retired or we don't play as much anymore. And just sort of talking through what they taught us, how they sort of shaped us as CDH players, why we stopped playing them, etc. And I think it'll be a good time, a good little retrospective to be paired with something that I guess we can talk about in a sec.
Yeah, it's kind of like why. It can also be a bit of a dive into why you stop playing decks in general.
Yeah, exactly.
Kind of abstracting from our individual anecdotes. But yeah, before we get into that, wait, we're not going to talk about what we've been doing since last episode. We've got a listener question, shaking things up. And this listener question comes to us from Mercy, who asks, "Did you guys die, or did you just take a month and a half off?" Well. This show was actually pre-recorded. This was pre-recorded in July. This has been recording July 2023. This is just, a late release. No, it's things just got hectic schedule-wise. We had a couple we had one recording session kind of scheduled. Things kind of fell apart, and then the holidays hit. So it was just kind of difficult to get everyone together, and it's like, we'll just
sort of snowballs, yeah.
Well, we'll just do it in our year in review, right? And then, our year in review got postponed because of some more issues with scheduling. So, yep. Well, here we are.
Yeah, we had some illness, and then we had a blizzard. That's why this isn't the year in review.
Yep.
It's a good time.
So we are currently recording at the time when we were actually be doing a year in review, but at least we're getting something down on paper on the permanent record.
Yeah.
But we will be pausing the Patreon for a month or two because we promised people episodes that we did not deliver. So don't want to be charging people for work we didn't do. So for Patreon, this is just to let you know. Thank you for your continuing support, and we'll skip out on a couple of months since we owe you some episodes.
Yeah. Cool. And I guess you know what? We're since we've already kind of messed with the traditional formatting of the show, we did just mention the year in review, and we're going to cover this in new developments, or this was going to be covered in new developments, but we are still planning to do our year in review.
Yep.
And it's actually going to be this coming Friday
from the release of this episode, which will
the
be
19th.
Yeah, there you go.
Friday the 19th. Time probably later in the day, like maybe 9 p.m.
I
don't know.
Thursday
We'll
the 20th.
check.
Sorry.
Check the Discord. We'll have an announcement on with like a exact start time. You can follow it on Twitch, or eventually just catch it on YouTube. Always a fun time doing our year in review. Yeah. Cool. Stay tuned for that. Cool. So without further ado, let's jump into housekeeping. And in housekeeping, as always, we like to give a shout out to our new patrons. So big shout outs to Weird Kids, You rock.
And honestly,
also-
isn't that just so fitting? Our community, just a bunch of weird kids.
Well, so
Absolutely.
did we address the patron name that we messed up because we didn't say you rock on show on air?
Oh,
I think we
yeah.
talked about it in the
eventually, yeah.
okay.
Yeah.
The we
Did we?
scissors and you rock. Oh my god.
I feel like we noticed that, and that was like the last episode that we did before we went on like a mini hiatus.
Yeah. Oh, that's we really let the community down on that one. That we add another month to the Patreon pause for that.
Yeah, seriously.
Yeah. Thank you for becoming a new patron. You're gonna get a couple months off, but yeah, it's very much appreciated. Cool. So that brings us to new developments, and I'll pass this on to you guys.
Yeah, so I guess the first one we got is that Reed and I will be at MagicCon Chicago on February, it was the 24th, 25th, I believe.
Ish.
So yeah, who are there? Come on down, say hi. We can jam some games, hang out, have a good time.
23rd to the 25th of February, yes. And yeah, it's gonna be a good one. There are also, oh god, I know there are a couple of other events that I'm probably making it out to, but I will talk about those in next couple of episodes because it's not quite figured out yet, and I don't have the things for them on hand. But at least for a heads up, there is going to be a tournament being run in Boston that I'm probably going to be making it out to, which is going to be a good time. So if you're in that area, make sure to check, and I'll drop a link for that in the next episode probably, so just keep up there. And then there's also, I believe, going to be a tournament happening in Toronto, if anybody is in sort of our area, at the Hairy Tarantula, that we can actually, I have this right here, so I can just read this off and we can do this promo now. Because we're probably going to end up going to that, at least me and Morgan. Presumably we're going to drag Lyndon out as well, because it's like literally right here.
If it's in Toronto, I'm going.
Yeah. So it's going to be CDH at the Hairy Tarantula, March 16th. So it looks pretty good, and we'll put the link for that in the description here, so if anybody's around, I believe. So pricing looks like it's going to be Trop for first, a revised booster for second, which is pretty sick, and then some fancy Cavern of Souls for third and fourth. So yeah.
Remember
Is
when
it bad that I
prizing
kind of
for
want the
CDH
revised
tournaments-
The revised, I was about to
More
say it, like take the revised booster over the Trop.
I was gonna say, remember when the prizing for CDH tournaments of like this kind of scale was just like a firm handshake and a you know pat on the back?
I remember winning many a firm handshake. Absolutely.
Yeah, that's like you go to like some LGS and they're like running them in every city like pretty regularly, and it's like, yeah, duels. It's like, what?
Oh shit.
Like that is crazy. It's so crazy. I love it. Yeah, and that kind of wraps up new developments. So on to the main topic of the show, which is the ghosts of Decks Past.
The Decks of Christmas Past? One of them works better. Decks of Christmas Past works if we actually release this episode when we were supposed to record it, which is like 2 months ago, like right before Christmas. But you know, we could double dip here. We could be like a bit belated on the holiday spirit for the naming.
Okay, so I mean, we don't really have a lot of detailed show notes on this. Our show notes is basically just the list of decks that we kind of want to talk about.
Turns out we don't really need that many show notes for talking about decks that we've all played extensively, or like have witnessed each other playing extensively, and like have a lot to talk about.
Yeah, and this kind of goes to our we did the episode recently where it was like more of a loose kind of format, kind of just talking with some rough structure and ideas. And I think we're gonna keep playing with that because there was a lot of positive feedback. So yeah, if you guys like the format of the show that we're kind of more loose and whatever, then yeah, definitely let us know in the Discord, please. Okay, but yeah, on to our old decks. So I've got a lot more listed here.
You have a lot. I think you're gonna have to do some grouping.
Well, they're already grouped.
You have to do some.
Yeah,
some
of these are going to be kind of glazed over, even though
maybe just go.
Each one of these deserves their own full 2-hour long episode. Okay, so for me, my first little bullet point is Marin, Varals, and Gitrog. Marin being like the very first deck I kind of got into CDH with, Varals being the first real-ish CDH deck I played, and then Gitrog being what this kind of Golgari pile of decks eventually became. And Varals, Marin, they kind of transformed into Gitrog, so I was never really going to go back to them. They're fun. You know, I learned a lot in terms of like CDH getting into this from Marin and Varals. But then, yeah, Gitrog really kind of barged onto the CDH scene with that deck. And just haven't been playing it really at all recently, even though I feel like a lot of people will associate me with Gitrog a lot.
Probably still do consider it's like a core part of your online brand.
And the funny thing is, even on the Gitrog server, there's like a joke where you ascend to you get like Toad Sage and then Top Frog, and then you just the further up you go, the less Gitrog you play. And a lot of
the reward for mastery of Gitrog
is that you don't have to play Gitrog anymore.
He is a free elf. I think the thing with Gitrog, I do enjoy playing the deck, but I played it so like every game for what felt like 2 years at least, and did a lot of advancements. And it just, a lot of where I derive my pleasure in CDH is kind of refining, tuning, and discovering and brewing. So I got a lot of enjoyment playing Gitrog initially and tuning it to where I thought the list was like super tight. And the list has been in that state for years now. Like the only thing that really changes is whenever a new card comes out and Gitrog needs to adjust to the meta or, you know, incorporate this, and then everyone gets together to discuss. But right now it's kind of just like going, if I play it, it's just going back to relive the glory days, you know. And that's just there's so many other decks that I'm interested in working on and I want to get actual gameplay data on, that it kind of makes it hard to go back to Gitrog. And so I keep pilfering my list, like my physical list for cards. Like, I'll just take this one and put it over here and blah blah blah, and then it's like 15 cards short, and it's like, do I really want to re-proxy everything out to, you know, rebuild this list so I could play it? So when I eventually do move to like fully proxy and I just have every deck sitting at like fully complete built, then I'll probably go back to Gitrog more. But until then, sadly, it's just looking at me in the corner and like crying,
staring wistfully.
Yeah, dude. I have some sweet. That's the only deck where I have like, I bought some sick altars for that deck and like shelled out some real money. So it's like pimped out. And I'm just not using
just
those
sitting,
cards.
not being used at all.
It's sad.
I feel like there's also something to be said that, like, I feel like Gitrog's one of those decks that, unless you're a very specific type of person, feels sort of easy to burn out on, in terms of like, I feel like once you get to a certain caliber of player and like playing in a certain caliber of pods, it feels like Gitrog, you can get burned out on that playstyle like pretty quickly, because it's like a deck with a lot of strategic depth as long as you get to the starting line, but like there are a lot of pods where you're just not even gonna get to the starting line, and then there's just like no depth to it. You're just like, well, all right, I guess we're just like rolling the dice to get to play the actual interesting game, and then the other half of the time it's just like not interesting and I'm losing.
Yeah, well, it is more like, I mean, Varals was listed here, and there's some other decks listed here where they experience that a lot more. Gitrog does have a bit of leeway.
I think Gitrog gets that even more though, in terms of like, Gitrog basically has no game without Gitrog in play, unless you have like, I mean,
unless you have an ad nauseum
to go along with it.
There's a lot of things that you can do without Gitrog play, and also like, since we've gotten a lot more tools to like play rush Gitrog out. I do think though, it's like there is that aspect of, you know, getting to the starting line to have like a true like it's not like you're not completely out of the game. You still have game plans, but you don't have access to your full set of tools. And the way that
and like you're not like, you know, drawing additional cards. You're not like interacting to the like you sort of have a hard time drawing the game out to the same extent, or like navigating around like weird states.
The worst thing about Gitrog is that it feels like people always accurately assess or over assess its threat level now. And it's like, and I'd say over assess because it was accurate for a while when it was maybe sitting in the tier 1.5 range. Now it is like 2 comfortably, and not like at the top end of 2.
2 and a bit, yeah.
Yeah, so
Is that even? Does it even?
2.5.
I would still say it sits at 2. But yeah, it is just.
It depends on how strict you're being with 1.
Yeah.
Yeah. But it gets a lot of respect. I mean, it's a threat. It can do very threatening things. It deserves respect, but it gets a little too much respect. And so it's just, I like playing some of these more, and it feels weird that like Gitrog could even be considered a. Like, I just don't see that deck really anymore. Like, from even though the server is huge and you're still getting new pilots.
I'm not super surprised, just because, like, especially the place where you would see it is when you say I don't see that deck anymore. That's because you don't see it in tournament settings, which is probably correct. Like, I feel like there are probably still a lot of Gitrog pilots. They're probably just playing Gitrog at like local events or like just local play groups, not necessarily bringing it to tournaments. Because
it's actually so funny. At the Punt City that I went to, you guys did not Punt City, sorry. Buff Temple-East that I went to. You guys couldn't make it out, but I went with someone from the Gitrog server, Small, and he made the trip up from Michigan. We were chilling down at the tournament, and there was a Gitrog player. Neither of us playing Gitrog. Both of us like have years of experience playing Gitrog.
Yeah.
And we're just sitting in the background. We're talking with Tad, being like,
the...
"Oh, this is how he's messing up right now," and blah blah blah. And then later on, he came to the Gitrog server, was talking, and he was like, "Oh my god, you guys were there!" Like, it was a lot of fun. I love that, watching people play Gitrog and being like, "Yeah, you're doing this wrong." Like, that's still fun for me.
Lyndon loves just sneak dissing everybody that plays his decks, and just the air of superiority.
No,
superiority.
No. But it is funny that, like, because it feels like years and years ago I went through all of these trials myself and kind of just like got through. But it's still fun to see, like, I mean, on the Gitrog server, we help set up all kinds of things, like for new players, Gitrog questions. We put all this energy into a primer, lots of resources, and then you still see people like having to learn all of this stuff themselves, and it's kind of just like, it's fun because you get to look back and be like, man, can't believe that's where I used to be in terms of Gitrog understanding, and come so long so far. Yeah.
So the question that I have before we get into any of my first picks here is, why'd you drop Varal's, buddy? You could have been on the team.
Look, Varal's was it's a good one trick, man.
It's a fantastic one trick. It's so much. It's also a great character builder, I think.
Well, it really taught me like how to play CD, like, because Marin, which I still do consider CDH, especially like the way I ended up building it with like Hulk and like that, and you could argue is on the edge of high power, whatever.
Yeah, it also
fringe.
Marin still, even like fully optimized Marin, doesn't really teach you how to play CDH necessarily. It sort of tells you how to play Marin around CDH.
Yes. And it was going to Varal's really gave me a taste for, like, you need to shift your game plan to being hyper proactive. Mm-hmm. And you are kind of all in, and then Gitrog really was nice to. Well, I played Varal's enough to be like, well, I kind of get the idea here, and then I was like, this is not my forever deck. And then when I found Gitrog, it had that level of complexity and really kind of bridged the gap. It's like, well, you can go long, you can grind, but you can go fast, and you can have some resiliency, different like pivot points, and that's really what kind of steered me away from Varal's, was that there was just something more suited to my tastes, just right there in Golgari.
Betrayer.
Yeah.
Anyway,
and honestly, okay, I just want to say, when I went from Varal's to Gitrog, and this is something that I think is so funny because, I would not say, and you guys can comment on this, I am the least tier horror person on this podcast, and I actively, if something is too good, and I mean, we'll talk about this later. I've got something on this list as well. But if something is too good, I kind of actively find myself like I have an active aversion to it.
Moving away from it, yeah.
Yeah, and gitrog is like in Golgari, it was literally at the time like this is undisputably the best Golgari deck, and it is super popular. Like it felt
absolutely.
like such a non-Linden move.
Gitrog was
at
like
the time.
probably like the second most played deck for like a while. Like it was like Godo before Godo, and then even like
it's still
Godo
like the
was in
biggest
current
server.
Godo,
It's
like-
got huge recognition. Like yeah, it's
I guess Godo was Winota before Winota, and Gitrog was
Yes.
Godo before Godo. It's
Yes,
sort of
yeah.
The
That's a
train of
good way to
lineage
put it.
there for like popular decks, right?
yeah.
And even then, I guess Winota's sort of dead now. I don't know. Like Winota is sort of dead now, and I don't even know like where people are. Like what's the current Winota equivalent is the question.
Blue farm. I don't know.
No, it's no. It's like one of the what's the Morgan. You're probably gonna have the best idea of this here, but I don't know. Like I don't fucking.
I don't think there's
Kin's
like an
too
equivalent.
complex. There's just like not a good
I
equivalent,
mean,
right?
I don't know. I guess
Go
there's
to
like,
CDH Twitter, whatever they're fucking chilling.
I mean, like, I feel like you could make
No, 'cause
arguments
there's a
that
very
some people
specific-
play Tivit like it's Godo or Winota.
That's reasonable.
Tivit is
yeah.
it? Yeah.
To be clear, I don't actually think that's like.
Yeah, and you shouldn't be playing it like it's Godo, but people definitely do. I don't know.
I mean, yeah. Okay, Reed, you.
Yeah. I think probably the big initial one, if we're gonna go in chronological order, which I guess we just are. It's gotta be Selvala, because first like real CDH deck, and yeah, that one was interesting. I sort of that one was the first one that I actually owned pieces of IRL. And I still, like, I think I owned... Savala's probably the second most complete deck that I own, aside from TNT right now. I guess, like, some 5-color stuff at this point. But, yeah, it's just, like, the introduction to the format, and, I don't know. It helps you... I don't know. I feel like Savala didn't do a whole lot for development as a CDH player, aside from getting me an understanding of how mono-green combo lines work. And getting an understanding that all mono green decks are sort of the same deck at their core. Like they're
That's
all
not
just,
true. There's another one on this list that is functionally very different.
That's I'm just gonna name drop now. Yasan is the same mono green deck as like every other mono green deck. It just so
you're
happens
high.
that
You're absolutely high.
it has more stuff surrounding the central core, but the central core is the same shit, which is just like you're eventually finding like some like Teamer Sabertoothy Wirewoody Quarian Rangery thing to like eventually combo off with, and then like it just the pieces that interlock with that might be different depending on the commanders.
No, absolutely not. First of all,
now it's a
there's
Shia.
lineage-
Now it's a Shia.
There's a
with
lineage
Quarian Ranger,
of mono green storm decks. Okay. There's
and
Marwyn, there's Selvala, there's
Yes.
you could put in
Except
a Shia
those
Goreclaw.
what I'm saying is
Seton.
those are all secretly the same as all the mono green control decks because they all end the game using the same cards and use the same toolbox pieces to get there.
This is unacceptable. That's an unacceptable opinion.
15 cards in the deck are various degrees of bad green creature tutors. Like Yasan cuts down on those
That's
because he
a
has the
function
command
of the
zone and
card
plays it.
pool. That's a function of the card
Yeah,
pool.
that's what I'm
not a
saying. All
function
mono
of
green decks
the way they
are
play.
the same and were the same because of the
No.
card pool.
You're absolutely delusional.
There's
But
only
carry
so
on.
many ways to win the game in mono green, and they're all like all the good ones are played in all the mono green decks. I'm
Dude,
sorry.
every deck that plays the Oracle Consult is literally identically the same because they win the game the same way. Read 2020.
yeah, except if like all the ways that all those decks found Oracle Consult, and honestly, like a lot of those
No,
decks
they
are
all
sort
run
of
the same black
decks.
tutors, bro.
They are
Shut
they are
up.
sort of all the same
Bro,
decks.
I mean, there are a
most of the
lot of
Grixis
Oracle
Plus decks
console
are
decks
sort
that
of
are
the
all the same deck.
Yes,
Yeah.
but not everyone is the same.
But those,
That's the
I think,
point.
Yeah,
I think there are
but-
Oracle console decks that share
Blue Farm
significant-
is exactly the same as Thrasios Tymna, is exactly the same as Tivit, is exactly the same as Nagila. Like, come on, man.
Okay, but like, Blue Farm is the same as like a Kinnan Basalt,
Roxai
Nas,
and Kenrith
Thrasios,
and
Tymna,
Nagila
like, those
a
are-
lot of the time, and like yeah.
Yes, there are decks that have similarities. I'm not saying every green deck
But,
is its own
anyway.
unique special person.
Anyway,
I'm
The
just saying
point being,
Yishan is not Selvala.
Selvala taught me that all mono green decks are the same, and then you can basically like piece together. You can figure out how all the mono green decks win as soon as you learn one of them. which is why I get to like I have multiple distinct experiences like talking to somebody about their mono green deck. It's like Yeva or Marwyn or Ashaya or whatever, and they're like, oh yeah, so like the win lines are like pretty complex but X, and I'm just like, no, yeah, I get it. I get what the win lines are. They're all sort of the same win line, just like packaged in different ways. I get it. But yeah, Saval, I don't know. Saval's sort of interesting because it's also like it gets you in a place if you start playing it first. And I don't think I'd recommend anybody to start the format with Saval at this point. It's sort of hard to recommend Saval at all unless you're doing like some truly innovative stuff with it, with like chunky mid-range Sylvala, which I think is probably still underexplored, but that's neither here nor there. I think like the Storm versions of Sylvala were just like sort of interesting at the time for like figuring out, getting like a good concept of like interlocking win pieces, and like it's like sort of one-dimensional, but there's like a bit of variation in how you have to carry out the game plans and stuff, and like sets up a bit, although I think a lot of at least my development as a player came after this deck, but yeah. And I think
sorry, when you say chunky mid-range Sylvala is underexplored, you just mean like we don't fully understand exactly the depths of how bad it is?
I mean, there's also, I don't know, it's like it's got some weird stuff going on.
Playing mid-range creatures is just good sometimes. It
can consistently go bigger than Kinnan in terms of mana production, but like you're dropping in stuff that's a lot worse than your command. Like you need the payoff for your mana, which is the issue. Unless you
Sylvala plus Void Winnower. That's what you're saying.
Well, yeah, that's you're just like hardcasting stuff like Void Winnower or like just like fat things that do mid range stuff and like sort of
let's go.
Yeah, something like that. And then yeah, I think I just sort of dropped Sylvala after a while because it's it's one of those things where I don't know. I find mono green in general to be a bit one-dimensional, especially Sylvala tends to be one-dimensional a lot of the time without your commander. And I was just looking for better stuff, looking for a bit more interesting stuff. Just I'm always a fan of brewing, and at that point, anyway, like I always sort of like playing the best decks that I have access to or that like I can reasonably play in tournaments. And at this point in my playing of CDH, I was not yet at a point where I felt like I was playing the best deck that I knew of yet, so there was like a while to go before I got to a point where I like stabilized what tournament deck I ended up playing. And like on it, there weren't really even that many tournaments at this point, so it's like sort of hard to say that I was looking for a tournament deck necessarily.
Nice. Morgan?
Sure. So my decks are Kess and Anala, which I lumped together. And I think, obviously, while they did play out slightly differently in that, Anala not having any sort of value in the command zone or, like, card advantage or recovery in the command zone, forced doing the more all-in situations. They both were, like, pretty all-in and were, I think, a good learning experience for, like, when to go for it. Because, like, definitely as a player, that's something that I think I've struggled with historically, like playing overly conservatively. So those definitely helped. I played. I guess I can lump in. I played Kestia, and I'll say old Kenrith. Like I do still play Kenrith, but I'm talking Kenrith Flash Hulk. And those were very much like mirror breakers, where there was like a time where it was all about value, and so just getting something that
just like
that could go like that little bit bigger, that little bit deeper on card advantage. Like Kestia could attack when like Tymna couldn't, and could cap out at like a few more cards.
The dumbest justification for playing a band commander, but like the fact that it actually worked.
It worked an unreasonable amount.
Yeah, it's just like I'm just gonna like cast this Kestia and then like put a curiosity on some dude that I have lying around and just like draw a couple of cards a turn when you can't.
Feels good, man. Feels so good. So yeah, those are definitely some of the decks.
Yeah, I don't know.
I feel like you can delve more into your kind of like Kess era, man. That was a
Yeah,
long
I was
time,
about to
man.
say, because I don't know, when I started playing with Morgan, like I guess you were playing Muldroth at the time, but when we really started playing at like local events and stuff, like local group get-togethers, like you were on Kess for a while, like a long time.
I remember
I
Kess.
feel like,
feeling like Kess was Morgan, like selling out to being. That was. I feel like that was your first like
it's probably
big.
your context, like you having the context of having played with him before. But for me, like
Yeah.
Morgan was just like the Kess dude for a long time. For
Oh
me,
no, he for sure.
I mean, that was
yeah.
the deck that I like got the cards for first. Because when I was
Right.
still at school, I bought the wizard precon and was playing Marisol like more casually, and then had Kess. It was originally like Kess turns.
Quote casually.
And then it became like High Tide Storm, and then it became Consult. So yeah, I guess I played through like all the developments of Kess. We played Paradox Engine, we played Aetherflux Reservoir, we had
you cast a lot of pyroclasms.
yeah, I did. That was another
like a lot of pyroclasms.
Massacre Kess Massacre, possibly my favorite play.
classic.
Like,
Yeah.
it's like, cool, I'm going to pay 4 mana for
Eat-
my commander and also
eat shit,
wiping
Dark
everyone
Dex.
else's board. Feels good. Yeah, and it was I mean, at the time it was very much like a dichotomy of like very like creature focused, usually Hulk decks, but it could also be like cats or I mean, some people were doing like pod stuff. And then there was like the storm decks, and those were like sort of the two main like, I don't know, super archetype. I feel like that's, I don't like that term because archetype is
I mean, the clearest division at the top of the format, and there wasn't necessarily a top of the format at the time in terms of tournament results and events and stuff, but like it was just sort of, the dichotomy was like, do you want to play Flash or do you want to play Paradox Engine?
basically, yeah. And yeah, it was, I think it was a good place for me to start because obviously, like, I feel like now I've definitely shifted more into the, at least the spiritual successor of Flash Hulks. Obviously, Flash itself is banned, but
I don't know. I feel like you. Aside from when you were playing, let me know if I'm stepping on your toes here. But I sort of want to dig into some of this because I feel like you were always sort of on the side of playing closer to, not necessarily the paradoxal or like Paradox Engine stuff, but like definitely Kess style Thrasios mid-range decks. Like Cats is like definitely, I don't know. At least the way that you played it, Cats felt closer to like Kess mid-range control than Flash.
Well, I guess when I got my start on Cats, that was like an attempt to move like Opus Thief stuff into those colors. But I mean, I don't know, that I feel like that experiment ended a while ago, and then I spent a while doing like Sacred stuff and Hermit Druid, and then like Stacks Cats I was on for a while, all of which I think is very much like the creature side of things.
Sure. Yeah.
But I guess like obviously I do experiment and I play like more stormy decks like for fun. And I think there's like a chance that if I hadn't started with something like Kess and I just started on something like TNT, I like might not have Vadric together now if I'd started on TNT.
Mm-hmm.
If that makes sense.
Makes sense. Vadric is just like the perfect. Vadric's like the perfect motivator commander for like actually playing like sort of manualish Storm.
I love
at the
Vadric.
moment now.
Vadric is
It's
very
so
cool.
fun.
Dude, deck's hot. Deck's very fun to play.
He's in the Baral family of decks, but he's like Just
It's definitely not.
What?
Definitely not the Baral family of decks.
No, it is in the Baral family of decks where your commander just purely discounts instants and sorceries.
No, it's
But-
not the
Yeah,
same
but
at
it's-
all.
But it
No,
does
no, no,
so
no.
much more.
It's not
It does
the same.
because its effect is much stronger. It lets you actually do beyond control. and, like,
Okay,
do-
okay. We're getting into semantic argument here because we're in a freeform podcast, and I want to get this out of you, and I want to have this discussion. Is Mizzix in the family of Baral style decks?
Yeah.
You're deranged.
I mean, I also say that Thada Adele is in the Baral family of decks.
That's more understandable than saying that Mizzix is in the Baral style of deck, like the Baral family.
Look, Baral.
You're saying
Baral-
the Baral family
Okay, wait,
extends
wait,
over
Lyndon.
everything that either discounts incident of sorceries
Is-
or plays mono blue art
is
control.
Kikar in the Baral family of decks.
Yes.
There's
But they're
no
all
saving him. Reed.
No,
So
here's
insane.
here's
Yeah,
here's what I'm saying.
I'm tapping
They're
out
not
of this one. I thought I wanted the smoke. I did not in fact want the smoke.
the family of decks isn't it's not like, you know, it's all like it's like, man, they're like second cousins, okay? Like they're distant relatives.
Bro, you gotta.
They're
we're gonna
related.
like it's just like every CDH deck is like the descendant of like okay, so what's the Australopithecus of CDH decks then? Because we're gonna walk through the entire fucking family tree here.
Well, I mean, the answer to that is Dralnu. So
I don't even think that's true.
Precursor to.
Like I think many of the decks, or like the lineage of many CDH decks doesn't actually trace back to like.
no.
I think there's some
I think a lot of them.
lineages.
I think Carador is probably the progenitor of one of the main lineages.
Oh, for sure.
Which persists to this day. I think that one's split a bit, but like honestly, it's still pretty centralized, right? Which is just
no,
like
that's a very narrow family.
The non-blue Staxy creature thing, but like is still with like actively trying to present win cons.
Here's the fucked up thing: is that I don't. is that you could very very easily argue that the decks. I don't view Baral and Jace JVP as being related. But
This
this
is making it even harder to understand
because I think you could argue that JVP is closer related is sort of related
if
to
Thada
Mizzix.
Adele is related to, yeah, because like JVP is clearly related to Mizzix and Magic, like
Look, man,
inextricably related.
I just see the world. I'm just built different. Okay, I just see things on a deeper level than you guys.
Built
and
different. Parentheses derogatory. Like,
look, I've got more microplastics in my body than just about anyone.
Lyndon's like
It is giving
just
me
like
superpowers.
his brain cavity is 50% microplastics at this point. It's bad. It's real bad.
Okay, I guess like I see. This is like baby's first CDH take, where it's like they both say cost less to cast, and then you just stop thinking. But like,
no.
The fact that Baral
sometimes return to simplicity is good.
The fact that Baral is capped at 1 means that you don't build the deck with the intent of like abusing big mana.
Like ever.
Yeah.
It's
No,
not.
Which is like a key
But
feature
it's
of decks like Vadrik and
But
Mizzix.
fundamentally,
And JVP.
fundamentally, the thing that makes them in the same family to me is that the mana cost discount changes how you evaluate the cards that are because I mean, obviously you can say that for like most decks. Like, well, the fact that it has this unique ability changes how you evaluate the cards that go into the deck. But it changes how you evaluate them along a similar axis, which is the mana cost portion of card evaluation.
Okay, but like this comparing these types of mana reduction is like saying that a mana dork and dockside fundamentally do the same thing.
Don't get him.
They're related.
No,
They're related.
Oh my god! I want
Rituals are part of the ramp family.
So what you're saying is original Joda is in the same family as Baral because it changes how you evaluate cards because it changes the mana cost.
You guys, ramp and dockside. That's like humans and chimpanzees. Okay, They are related. They're closely, but it's not insects to dogs. Like, come on.
I don't even know what you're trying to say.
Dachshund's actually a mutt. He's a really muddy crossbreed between the Dork family line and the Rock family line. and like there's like a bit of Ristic study in there. He's like 1% Ristic study.
Hold on. How I was gonna say it's Ristic study in the Ristic study family? No.
Yeah. It triggers based off of opponent game actions and opponent board state. There's like a bit of that family line in there. He's
okay,
like 1% Ashkenazi Jew as well.
Yeah. Okay, I see it. I see the vision now.
You know where I'm coming from here? 5% Sub-Saharan African, 1% Ashkenazi Jew, like 2-ish% North European.
Yeah.
We're gonna get... Oh god.
Dude,
well, I'm doing the 23andMe bit. If people are missing where I'm coming from here, just like I'm doing the 23andMe bit.
No, Reed, I see it, man. Don't justify.
I know. Morgan had to bring it up, so now I have to explain myself. Well, is that not like the anyway? I'm moving on.
No, Reed, I stand with you.
Yep. You know what? That's honestly, I 100% agree. I think that Reed and Lyndon are clearly aligned in this discussion.
We come from the same family tree, man. I don't know what to tell you.
We're second cousins, man. Okay, that was a fun. Okay, so I mean, we mentioned Baral.
Somebody, I want comments. Nobody's actually allowed to go back and count, but you need to give us your best estimate in the comments of how many degrees separated from the main topic we got there. How far that tangent went. All right, getting back.
It was perfectly aligned with what we're talking about. Okay, so I mean, Baral and Thada were mentioned, so I'm just gonna talk about them. They're on my list. I view them as part of the same family. In fact, I view a lot of things within that family and kind of lineage. And Baral was my time playing Baral, I think really evolved me as not only a deck builder and brewer, because I really had to shift the way I evaluated cards when I built that deck, but it really leveled me up just technically as a player, because that deck is so unforgiving, because it's kind of just dog, that you need to you really need to just get every last drop out of that. Read no.
Continue talking on it.
You have to get every last drop out of that deck to get a win. It really it gives you nothing for free. Everything is earned, and it's like you're building up what feels like fractional advantage, like every turn, every time you cast a spell. It really forced me to learn how to counter spells properly, really evaluate whether or not, because you're trying to win in the ultra late game, and it's not like you have a great engine that goes in the ultra late game. So it really teaches you how to dismantle an opponent's deck and understand their engine, how it works, what are the key pieces you need to interact with, and just utterly dismantle them. And you need to do that to 3 players while maintaining control of the game, and the deck, even then, the deck does not have the tools to do that on its own. You need to become,
you just get to participate in them.
Yeah, you just need to become like really good politically and bullying people and just understanding, like, making deals. It really forced me to just evolve so much in those respects. That like I also really enjoyed my time playing that deck. So now I tend to lean towards decks as like some of my favorite decks that I play currently are ones that really have that control backbone that let me leverage my kind of political tools, and it really feels nice. It feels like the Naruto like Rock Lee versus Gaara fight when Rock Lee drops all of his weights and that's what it feels like to play Baral for a long time and then just play anything better. Like, and that's the thing, is everything is better than Baral. Right?
I was about to say, except it's like if Rock Lee dropped his weights and then it was just Riel instead of like an actual good deck.
That's what I'm saying. Like you play anything that's better, and if you're like, my God, this is the best deck in the I can do whatever I want.
I have so many more tools. I get to play good cards. Oh my God, I can actually win the game. I mean, I can't win the game, but I can like win the game more than Brawl can win the game.
Yeah, no, it's I'm very. So I haven't played Baral in ages, and I still maintain the list. And it's something I sometimes it's just the problem is when you play Baral games, and you guys played against Baral enough time, it's like you can just have like a 4-hour game very easily, you know. And I'm not trying to do that a lot these days. Like it's not just like for my own purposes, but it's like, man, you know, I've got to be considerate of the other people I'm playing with. It's people don't want to sign up for that unless it's like,
is anyone else a little offended? Like Reed, are you a little offended that now that Lyndon's primarily not playing with us, he's suddenly concerned about being considerate?
Yeah, it's for real. Baral's actually, it's sort of funny because it's in a weird space in terms of CDH decks where it's so bad for tournament play, not just because it's a bad deck, but also because like its win condition just doesn't function in tournament settings like at all. Because you just run into time and can't win in time like every time before you.
Like I'd be careful before you start throwing, you know, besmirching the name of this deck that was a top 4 in a tournament before Tier 1 Con, and you know the only reason, it was semifinals.
So
the only reason it didn't go to the finals,
it's top 16. Top 16.
It had the win. It had the win on board, and because I'm an honorable person, I upheld the deal. Okay, but that deck was set up in a position to go to the finals in that tournament. Okay, that's just be careful what you're saying.
Amazing. Anyway, so
you're saying it almost performed as well as Tazri Zerda did? Is that sort of what I'm...
How many colors does that deck have? What's your win condition?
Like effectively 0.
Okay, you just actually, no. What's my win condition? Why don't you tell me that?
Yeah.
Basalt combo?
How does that win?
Yeah, that's... Details, man. Details. Who cares? Let's get back on track, guys. Come on.
I'm pretty sure that Baral gets to play a higher proportion of CDH staples than that deck did.
Yeah, anyway, I was saying, Brawl's in a weird spot, because it's sort of unplayable for tournament play, because it, like, doesn't exist as a tournament viable deck just because it's WinCon, but it's also just, like, not actually a playable deck in, like, regular fun CDH, because nobody wants to play against it, and it's just, like, it's just not a fun experience playing with that deck, which is sort of funny, because that's an interesting niche. There aren't very many decks that are could be considered as CDH decks that are both unplayable in regular fun CDH play and unplayable in tournament CDH play.
True. Yeah. Reed.
So why'd you drop it? Well, why'd you drop it?
Well, I dropped it because I did the Rock Lee. Rock Lee didn't put back on the weights, man. Okay, once he was free, he evolved. You know, I've leveled up past Baral and
never to return.
So, I mean, I mentioned Thada. My initial version of Thada was basically just it's kind of like not a reskin of Baral, but it was like Thada build, get soul rings, and those kind of act like discounting things. But it lets you do stuff like, you know, do bigger mana stuff and whatever. Now I want to get back into Thada because I'm One Ring, and that's sick.
Yeah, it turns out One Ring is pretty disgusting with Thada, Adele, when you just like always can hit it, and then you can just build your deck around being like One Ring Storm.
Well, the thing with Baral is that it's there. I mean, I've talked about this many times on the podcast before, but there's obviously there's mana commanders, there's combo commanders, there's card advantage commanders, and there's hybrid, and that covers like almost everything. And Baral was a pure mana commander basically, and Thada was then doing the same thing. And now Thada is not only just a mana advantage commander, it is also basically tutoring one of the best card advantage pieces in the game. So it really it evolved. It evolved in such a massive way that one card, the fact that people play it, from it like Urza. One of the things with Urza that makes it great is that it's a mana commander that's also a good combo commander. So
Yeah.
like that going from one of those categories to hybrid is huge, and that Adele jumping.
Well, and also
like,
the fact that
levels up.
One Ring is
significantly.
also makes it sometimes a combo commander too, because like
Oh yes, yeah.
One Ring is like absurdly easy to abuse if you build your deck around.
Well,
like,
Thada
always having it,
straight
and,
up
like, it just
combos
always
with
has it. Yeah.
Well, so now, I mean, one of the problems with Thada before, obviously, was like if you did turns loops with Mystic Sanctuary that you couldn't break out of it. Well, now you just straight up do. And then
Yeah.
also, if you just one card combos with Mind Over Matter.
Which is a nice one to have around. It's also like you just play like keys in that deck now and like twiddles and stuff.
Yeah,
'cause,
yeah.
You just like make a bunch of mana and then like kill them, and then the rest of the deck is just all mana and interaction.
Yeah, exactly. So yeah, that one's gonna be resurrected for sure.
Eventually. I mean, somebody's already top 16 with that at the list, right? Top 4? Was it top 4? It might have been top 4. Morgan, you're like the only person here who can fact check me on this.
Sorry,
If you're
which
paying attention. I feel like there was a Thada list that top 16 to an event, and I only remember that because I think it was in a.
that sounds vaguely right.
I've watched some number of comedian videos in the past like couple of months. I don't know. I feel like I saw it at some point. Maybe not. Anyway, people are doing it. Might have beat you to the punch. Anyway, you need to build it and win a tournament with him, or London. That's your goal for this year. Win a tournament with Thada. I've assigned you.
Why do you hate me, man?
That's
Wow.
Well, can I just assign you decks to play in tournaments, Mister? I only ever play with.
I mean,
Task.
only if I only if I express my desire to do so with said deck.
Yeah, where was me expressing my desire to play?
Hey, you said you were gonna rebuild. You said it was good.
I want to rebuild.
Yeah, I guess if we're gonna follow that same line, I could probably talk about Curious Control, which is a weird one. I don't know. This one was recommended by Morgan to put on for me. And I don't know. I feel like it probably should be on, but it's a weird one because like I remember doing a lot of development on this deck and playing a decent amount with it, and then sort of handing it off and not touching it again for like ever for a while. But it turns out it like that deck ended up being a cult classic for like no reason. I don't know. Maybe it's just because like it was like a 4-color control deck and like people just wanted to play good control decks, and it was like the closest you could get to a good control deck at the time. But I don't know. It seems like a lot of people just like resonated with Curious Control, and like people have just like asked over and over and over the years of just like, hey, like how do I play this deck? How do I modernize it, etc., etc. So I don't know. It's a fun one. Yeah, I don't know. It played it for a while. It was sort of like the initial one for me of like a deck that functions basically purely based off of having a critical mass of value engines in the deck, like card draw engines in the deck, to support like higher levels of interaction and like free interaction, and then just like playing a minimum win condition engine or win condition package, which I guess sort of carries over to like some of the stuff that I do now, right? Just like playing this playing like a long game deck without necessarily having engines in the command zone that like, you know, also trying to have consistent mulligans for that stuff, which I guess is sort of like Sisse in a lot of the ways that I'm playing it right now, but you know, not trying to like control the game, just like playing the value engine into plan type of game. And then yeah, I don't know, I dropped it because it's Curious Control specifically has always sort of been meta specific deck. Initial versions were like anti-dork tech for the Hulk meta, and then I picked it up again for a bit and played like an anti-artifact version of it for like a more stormy meta, and then like sort of dropped it again. But I don't know. I feel like I was always sort of trying to make the concept work and sort of like I don't know. I felt like Curious Control for me was always sort of filed away under like proof of concept in my brain rather than like a deck that I would actually bring to tournaments. Is that bad? Is that wrong? Should I have told people that up front? I don't know. I have these feelings about a lot of my brews that end up getting like more visibility than they probably should, and I just like do I just not do a good enough job of dissuading people from bad ideas that are my doing?
No, because you're people taking only the top tier meta stuff like you do is cringe, and more people should play fun, interesting brews.
Just
You
play
have lots of fun and
games.
interesting brews. You just don't take them to
I just
tournaments
don't
because
play them
you're
in tournaments. Yeah,
lame
absolutely.
AF.
Dude, good decks are fun. I like playing good decks. They result in good gameplay, fun gameplay, or at least they should when the format's at a relatively healthy place.
Cringe.
I don't know. That's about all I got for Curious Control, unless you guys like actually think that.
No, I just never liked that deck.
I don't know. Okay, this actually, I want to get into that then. Why didn't you like the deck?
No, it's really you seen Arrested Development, and the mom was just like, I never really cared for Job.
Yeah, I really cared.
that's Curious Control for me. That was a deck where it's like everyone's like, oh, this is pretty good for tournaments. It's like tier 1 and blah blah blah. And I was like, nah, I just don't like it.
I think calling Curious Control tier 1 at any point in time is probably like an explicit lie.
People did.
Yeah, wild.
Yeah.
Glad I didn't hear any of that.
That feels like you're holding
the deck accountable for what people's opinions on it. Yes, I am. I mean, if I've said this a million times, man. Like, how many times do I have to say it? If it becomes popular and tiered, I don't like it. Like, it's not that complicated.
God, I need to start bringing Riel to tournaments and shilling it.
Bro, Riel is already one of the top performing tournament decks. So, what? We have the numbers. I posted them everywhere. Just don't start playing it. So long as it stays low key, then I'll be happy with it. If people start taking it, too many people start, and then I'm going to abandon it.
So is it just like that you get frustrated when you try and chill and people are like, yeah, we already know? So
I don't chill.
Well, I mean, you just said you posted the numbers for Riel. So
well, that was more.
No. He doesn't like shilling decks. He likes bragging that his decks are good.
Yes, yeah.
but
I love the
here's the paradox.
Of being an underdog who's proven right. Because
here's the paradox. He likes widespread acclaim and appeal for playing decks that are bad, but he still does well with. But he doesn't like any of that to bleed beyond the a niche cult appeal. Yes. As soon as he gets to mainstream appeal and people actually start liking the decks and picking them up, he's off it.
Thank you, Reed. You understand me so well.
I do. It doesn't mean that I like it.
Okay, Morgan. You got.
Drop in the big one.
Yeah, I didn't have this on the initial list, and then I was like thinking about my decks and also potentially scrolling through to try and find the Zerta list to see how garbage it was. And I scrolled past a food chain deck. And I was like, oh yeah, right. I played like
that whole like few
I played
years.
like 4 different food chain decks for like a good while. And that
they were
one,
like in the tournament rotation, huh? Like for a bit.
I think I played them in like Super League and stuff. I don't think I ever took them to solo tournaments. But yeah, it's man, I guess I stopped playing that because the meta just became all heuristic study all the time. I genuinely think there was Food Chain would be a reasonable deck to play if you could win through a heuristic study. Like, I think that's literally all it needs, because it's resilient to like artifact hate compared to other fast like Nas breach decks. It gives you like a combo that's a little bit more difficult to interact with, but just the fact that that combo is just stopped by someone having a heuristic study is so painful.
Well, there is one that does is Rocco Food Chain.
Yeah, that's not when I say food chain as an archetype, I mean the kind of food chain where you have console.
Yep.
Yeah. And again, how is Rocco related as a family to the main line? Just kidding.
Probably closer related to Carador than he is to Tazri, or I don't know. Wait, was Tazri the first 5-color food chain deck? It was, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
And then it was
Niv.
I'm rest in peace.
Yeah. Yeah. For the shortest period of time
literally
possible.
6 weeks.
Yeah.
And then it was the first.
And then there's like the all redheaded stepchilds of like Ukima Kazur.
Ukima Kazur is sort of the progenitor of like the 3-color like Sultai food chain decks, yeah. because now there's just like an infinite number of them. You can
Yeah,
play
I was
so
gonna
many
say
versions of that deck.
there's a lot of versions of that now. Play Doctor Who versions of that deck. Fun.
Doctor Who, Thrasios, thing.
Nadir.
Working.
Yeah.
Actually, Thrasios
No,
Nadir
because
is part
that's
of the...
Prosh. Because that's Prosh. That's not.
that
True,
is sorry. Yeah, that is
true,
actually part of the Prosh. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. Anything else to say about Food Chain?
I miss it. I wish it was still an archetype that we saw. I think it's interesting. It's a neat combo that like takes advantage of some of the quirks of the rules of Commander, and I'm a fan of that. But
yeah,
it's
agreed.
just like there's just so many better options if you want to play a fast, like, or like reasonably fast, slightly more resilient, or slightly less all-in combo deck than that one.
I'll see if there's ever Commander printed that kind of is more resilient and kind of maintains that fast combo. I don't think that's good for the format. I don't think Food Chain. I don't think a 5-color Food Chain deck that can grind is good for the format.
I think if Atraxa had been 5-color, that would have been like
Yeah, like I think Atraxa style of grind is probably fine, but like if there was like 5-color Tymna Food Chain, I agree. Like I think that's like super healthy. But like I think like some like fat commit, like I think like 5-color Atraxa would have been fine for the format.
Atraxa I could that's.
I mean, obviously everybody's yelling at us because Dockside, but I don't know. Like we could stand to have like some interesting 5-color thing that isn't just like soup with a like whatever commander that doesn't actually encourage you to do anything.
I think they should print a teamer partner that's a Food Chain, but that's what I think they should do.
Teamer partner, huh?
Yeah.
Mm.
What could go wrong?
I don't know why you would wish Maelstrom Wanderer Food Chain on the world, but you just did.
Like
and I hope
Maelstrom
you know
Wanderer
that.
plus Tymna. Think about how sick that.
No, I know, but. Oh, you mean? Oh, sorry. I thought you meant like teamer total. Like you
no,
play,
no.
like,
I mean like
a
one
teamer,
card.
a teamer like
that I can
okay,
partner
yeah,
with
no,
Tymna
never
and
mind.
play Food Chain.
Let's never imagine that again.
Yeah, I'm good. Just wiping that out of my brain.
Cool. So then I guess it comes back to me.
Then you want to talk about the other cool one that you're probably going to come back to at some point relatively soon.
No, I'm gonna save that one. I'm gonna save that one for
later. Right.
For last, I think. I want to go to one of my earlier roots, which is going back around the Hulk meta. So I'm also going to cover one of these other ones as well. So Yisan was briefly mentioned earlier. I played a lot of Yisan. I think it was might have been my next deck after Gitrog that I built, and that was kind of my first foray into interaction, which is kind of funny. It was very much like I had the Golgari cards, and then it's like, well, Yisan's pretty, I've got a lot of these cards already. Let me build Yisan. And then to actually learn Yisan, you have to learn combo lines, and then not just kind of a same linear combo line. Gitrog is a lot more linear combo wise, but Yisan was like, well, okay, if I need to interact here and do this, then how do I pivot?
Sorry, it's an objectively funny sentence to have out of context. Gitrog is relatively linear.
Considering how much time
it absolutely is
huffing balls about how hard their deck is to play.
No, this is the complete. It's not true. Anyone, all the like
I agree.
top frogs and everyone is like, they're just like, no, this deck is not actually that complicated. But,
it is. I fully agree. Gitrog actually is very linear. It's just a very funny sentence to hear out of context from like a Gitrog player's mouth specifically. Of like, this deck's like very linear.
Gitrog experts will all say the same shit. It for whatever reason, it's like this meme of, oh, chains of methodology is so hard to understand, and all this different, like, there are different scenarios and loops and things you have to pivot through, but like, it's all fucking. You assemble Gitrog, deck more Discord outlet, and it all solves itself. Yisan actually involves like, changing how you have to combo, having backup lines, and then how to interact. Also, is kind of the first time where you get into the politics and understanding of having, and this kind of started my developed me as like a more communicative player. I mean, Baral really like accelerated that, brought to the nth degree. But Yesan was very much like, hey, just as a reminder, I'm on verse whatever, and I have this thing that's gonna stop you from comboing, so maybe don't go for the combo, and then that way you can make it to the end step right before your turn and go get something proactive. Like you're not served by being quiet playing Yesan. Right, it's not good for you to be like, well, if they combo, then I can go get the interaction, because then you're falling behind.
Yeah, it's not a gotcha deck. It's very much a I'm holding a gun at you deck, and like we're gonna play the game this way.
Yeah, you have all these pieces in your deck that you can get, not because you want to get them, but because you want the threat of being able to get them.
Yeah, and you sort of want the table to believe that you can answer like anything at any given point in time until you can't.
Exactly.
Actually, sorry. What you want the table to believe that you can stop anything that they want to do proactively, but nothing that the rest of the table can do proactively.
Yes. Yeah. No, pretty much. Nail on the head right there. And then after that, I kind of so that was a brief one on Yesan, and then this is a full-on kind of family of decks here, which is it all started with Anafenza, which was a Razaketh, cats deck, heavy quotes there. But that was around the time of Hulk, where I was adamantly never going to play Hulk, and very cynically was like, I think this deck is just like it's just completely meant to hose Hulk, and I think you can play it, and I think it would be funny. And I remember, I think it was Morgan. I was like, when I was first brainstorming Anafenza, I was like, it wasn't the database at the time, right? It was like the Reddit sidebar or something like that.
Was it Dan's tier list, or it wasn't Dan's tier list? What was it called? It was something.
Whatever. Yeah, but I was like, oh, this deck is like a slam dunk to get onto that if you just like make it, because it's just doing something that no one else is. There is no other deck, and I would even say now, maybe there's decks that are sort of in the same vein, but nothing has really kind of reached the peak of Anafenza, where it was like everyone is playing Flash Hulk, and this deck is literally just a hard counter to the meta in the command zone.
Yeah.
And yeah, I don't think. Hopefully, we'll never see a meta, a time when you need a commander like that again, or that kind of commander is viable. Because not as soon as Flash Hulk was banned, I abandoned this deck. And I turned it into Tymna Tana with the kind of same Staxy, Hate Bears, Razaketh kind of core. And then I didn't like having 4 colors, because 4 colors is cringe. And then so I redid that as Tymna Halana. And that's a deck I have not yet played. So this is like an unborn child yet. It's I've got this deck brewed up. And then once I proxy it, I'm definitely going to jam this, because I do miss playing the Abzan kind of stacks Hate Bears kind of playing.
I'm so surprised that you haven't looked at Tymna Kadama at that point then.
I don't like,
sort of interesting too.
Yeah, you could in theory like Halana Tymna, or sorry, unlike the people do Tymna Halana Hulk, Halana really is no, like it could be any green partner, right? It could be Kodama.
Well, I'm not even talking about Hulk. I'm talking about the Kodama Sidisi stuff that people are doing right now. It's like sort of interesting with a CDC, not SBT. I always forget
the
called,
Undead
but,
Vizier.
Undead Vizier, 1-card combo with Kodama. It's sort of interesting.
Well, I don't know that one.
Yeah, it's like you just you do like it's like Karmic Guide or something, but it's it's you do like Sidisi Karmic Guide and then just like loop with Kodama triggers to put the thing that you're tutoring back into play for free without casting another spell, and then you just like kill off of it. I don't think it's that many.
I'm not familiar with that at all.
Like
I'm gonna look into that.
Yeah.
That does sound kind of interesting. I do like the Halana aspect of board control. I mean, to me, the thing with Tymna Halana is it really feels like a sister deck to Rocks.
I was about to say if you like Tago, you're very much gonna like Halana, I think.
Right. Well, I mean, I did kind of envision them literally from kind of conception as sister decks, where it's one of them is 3-color Thrasios, one of them is 3-color Tymna, and they're both have focus on board control. One of them is through stack control. One of them is through permanent based control and stacks. Like they very much mirror each other, and I kind of like that symmetry. So I think I'd probably keep Halana, but I would definitely look at Kodama as well. Yeah, those are that one.
If nothing else, Lyndon's definitely an appreciator of an sort of an artistic sense of having certain decks together and sort of like
yes, absolutely.
Yeah. Cool. I mean, I guess I could talk about Varals for a bit, huh?
Yeah.
Probably should have done this one a bit earlier. We were on the Varals train, but I guess this is the companion piece to talk about anti-Hulk, which is like my first Hulk deck. Yeah, Varals is fun. Still have Varals together, actually. Just haven't played it. Haven't touched it in a bit. Varals is, yeah. So sort of to expand on what we were talking about earlier, because like Lyndon played Varals for a bit.
So shout out Tim, who suggested this topic and is a huge Varals stan. Keeping the dream alive.
Keeping it alive. Definitely happy to hand that one off to Tim and never have to touch this deck in terms of actually updating it again. Even though I love it. Love Varals, love the deck. I have no desire to keep up to date with people asking questions about it and like actually keeping it with all the new releases and everything. Yeah, Varals was I played a lot of Varals for a while, and it was sort of my introduction to tuning in CDH and sort of like working a deck to get it to where I wanted it to be, because you know I didn't really have like a long time project deck before this, and through playing Varals I got a pretty good like starter course on a lot of concepts that I think are pretty important. I like, it's probably below the power level standard now in terms of having like a deck for learning to play CDH. I think we've moved past it at this point, and like probably I don't know what could really fill the same role, like maybe just Roxai. But I think there's like a certain degree to Varal specifically that was like, it was a deck where you really had to pick your windows. And there was like a bit of mulligan tuning in the deck as well, especially because, you know, you didn't really have value engines. And even now you don't really have value engines aside from One Ring for the deck because you're in Golgari. I feel like we've talked about Golgari a fair bit on the podcast about, it's just like it's a color combination with surprisingly few just like good staple cards in it. Or at least good staple creatures in it, which are like the accessible part of the colors that you would want to be able to get. Now like more so, but still lagging behind like a bunch of other color combinations and pairings. And yeah, like having a commander that is like a really nice piece of your proactive game plan, but doesn't actually provide any like value by itself, means that Varals was a really great starter deck for me at the time, especially like advancing the deck and like working on it a bunch and like getting it to a place where I was really like a lot more happy with it than where I started. Because I mean, like I started playing Varals and like my initial versions of the deck for like 10 games or so, like 20 games or so, like had a Hermit Druid in it and was like trying to like layer Hermit Druid stuff with Hulk and like gradually refined it more and more and more and more. And this is sort of, I feel like, where I got my love of cutting cards as well, because I would spend hours looking at the Varals deck list and be like, wow, I just like hate so many of the cards in this deck, but there aren't better cards in these colors. So I guess like I'll cut as much as I can and then try to like continuously backfill it with like strategies that I think might work or like card packages that I think might work and like make the deck actually function. And a lot of it was like, yeah, the big one I think for me was because there was like, aside from Flash, because Flash was legal at this time, I don't know why nobody was playing it, don't ask me. It was really, and even then, like, Flash wasn't winning instant speed. It was like one of the only decks that could consistently win at instant speed on like anybody's turn without really any setup. Like, you didn't have to have like a permanent in play to kill people. You could just like kill out of your hand at instant speed sometimes. That like really lent itself well to like establishing a play style and like play patterns and having the sort of mental pathways to really look at windows for winning the game and identifying exact points in the game where I could actually go for a win or you could go for a win, and navigating around interaction in those spots. And like, you know, the same thing about like it transferred over to Flash, but also it transferred in the future to like playing like any number of other decks, and also like the knock-on effects of learning how to pick windows for win attempts is also, you know, you learn how to play around interaction, which means after a certain number of games, after a long time playing, you learn how to read interaction, you learn how to read people's game plans and stuff like that. I don't know. I attribute a lot of how I play now and a lot of my like base CDH skills to having played Varals for a while and like actively trying to improve with that deck, because it was just like, again, I don't think it's great now for learning, but at the time it was definitely like unintentionally a great learning vessel for picking up a bunch of these skills.
I think that shit decks and low color decks are some of the best ways to advance yourself as a CDH player.
Yeah, I definitely think like that was always a thing for me, and I think I still stand by this now. Of like, I think learning CDH, you should start with, first of all, start with the best deck in the format, like generically whatever the best deck in the format is, just to get a sense for like top out power level. Like this is the measuring stick that I'm measuring everything else that I play with and against, and then after you get a few games in on that, or like, you know, however much on that to sort of get comfortable with that deck to a base degree, play like some low-ish color proactive deck with a bit of depth to it. I think actually Magda actually might be a fine one for that now. Maybe
Magda's still playable with OBM.
It's like a bit of, yeah, it's like I probably, people aren't playing as much Stormmasters as they probably should be. People I never play enough removal. I think it's probably fine. At least to get started on, right? But like just something with like low color proactive deck with some amount of depth to it, that isn't just like I'm gonna jam out my commander and just like try to win every game. Like, you know, something that involves picking windows, picking spots, not just like always just like immediately jamming. I don't know what that would be now.
Could still be
Kinnon's
like
a bit too grindy. I think Magda's probably the closest analog that I can come up with on the spot right now. I haven't put a lot of thought into this recently.
Well, I mean, Magda also
it's
in the, you know, adjacent to Yisan, where like you actually need to understand what your opponents are
doing. Yeah, you need to maybe that makes it a bit too complicated, but I don't know. Something like that. Some like low color proactive deck that like actively wants to win the game, but also like has depth to it, has different like timing things, or like different ways to work around different interactive pieces, different stacks pieces, stuff like that. And then after that, you can start like, you know, brewing, go back to play like best decks in the format, whatever. But I think that's always been like one of my.
I would add more steps in there. I think you should spend
a lot
of time. Yeah, no.
I'm not gonna ask somebody getting into the format the first time. It's like, okay, here are the 5 decks and like the required rating that you need to do to play this format. It's just like, okay, well, I'm just not gonna do that. I'm gonna go.
This is not to say I would say like how to learn the format. This is how to get better at the format.
Absolutely. I'm saying like just at a base level, I think, to play, if you wanted to get into playing CDH tournaments, say.
Sure.
I think like it's invaluable to like play the best deck in the format, usually some high color like good card pile, and then play like a low color proactive deck with some depth to it. And sense. Like those build, like those give you great context for getting into the format, and they build some really great base skills that you're like always going to need for whatever deck you play.
If you've been playing the format for a long time and you know you're mostly playing good decks, you're going to tournaments and you're trying to level up your skill level, start just dredge the bottom of the barrel, man. I'm telling you, like play a deck that has a lot of weaknesses that doesn't cover for your,
but that still has power to it. Like still has like some things to it that let you win games. But yeah, like has weaknesses.
If you
so
need the crutch of having a deck that can do stuff,
if you know nothing, being able to win.
You need the crutch of having a commander that like exists outside of the exact context of
scratch the play Baral. Learn every win
do
is
not let
earned.
Cam off. Do not listen to Lyndon. Just meet him. Anyway, and then I don't know. I dropped Varals because greener pastures. I moved on. I played better decks, but it's a fun one to come back to every once in a while.
Yeah. Morgan.
Yeah. I guess my last one is Kikar. And that I feel like that might have been my first failure.
As
first
that
long term. Yeah.
Never did what I wanted it to do.
Mm. Which is sad because it's got a bunch of sick shit. Like that deck is so cool, but it just like isn't quite.
Yeah, it's just like a little short of where it needs to be in a lot of ways. And I think like it honestly it took I feel like it has helped me recognize that about like other brews I'm working on in the future, where like I'll start something and I'll be like, oh, this is I've seen these problems before. Um and I do think that's like an important skill as a brewer, is to understand the limitations of whatever you're brewing. And to be clear, that doesn't mean like you stop brewing the deck if you're like interested or you think it's cool or whatever. But like you can still absolutely brew a deck that isn't, going to be at the power level you maybe hoped for initially. But I think it's important to be able to recognize when that's what's happening. And it can save you a lot of frustration.
Has there been a lot of
Kindred Discovery.
Has anyone made kick our work?
No.
because
I've never seen it like. There was like the Divergent version, but
I think that was always probably the worst version, honestly.
Yeah.
Even though I think it was instrumental in probably making the Divergent version popular. I don't think it was probably ever correct necessarily.
yeah, and then like it, just all your value engines were just like a little too much, and like you need to like play your mana to get your stuff out, but you also want to like hold it to get the triggers, and there's just like a bunch of things that make it not quite work.
Everybody else just sort of jumped ship to Elsha as well, like afterward.
Yeah.
Not like everybody, but a lot of people was just like, no, we're just gonna like.
Oh,
go
this
play
is
Elsha
an
instead.
easier deck that does kind
Yeah.
of what I want to do.
I just need to find a Sensei's Divining Top. Okay, that's a lot easier than like having to piece together like a 4-card win con or whatever.
Yeah.
So I have to admit, I do want to mess around with Narset, like the
New
one.
Narset? Absolutely. I still think who was I having this discussion with one of you, or is it somebody else? I don't know.
I think it was me. We had a discussion about it because
I feel like
think it also
told
like top
you-
16 to
Yeah, I
tournament
feel
or
like I
something.
told you
It's like-
about this discussion because I know that I think Kai has been working on it. I don't know if Kai's still playing it, but like Fervent Alchemist Kai. But yeah, I think that deck, I think Narset is like just the best Jeskai commander ever printed, and it's like not particularly close. I don't think.
I'm not gonna fight you on
You
that
mean
one.
it's
sure.
not Vadrock?
Yeah, like, it's not like it's
definitely
a
not Vadrock. Oh, sorry.
you know,
Do you know what it
crazy
does,
statement.
Lyndon?
No.
Okay, so it's
not off the top of
it's-
my head.
It's 4 mana. Everything you control has prowess. And then whenever it attacks, you can cast a non-creature, non-land with mana value less than its power from any graveyard
Without
paying its mana cost. Yeah.
Hmm.
And it starts as a 3/4. So you like instantly, without casting anything, you just like attack and cast detutors out of people's graveyards and stuff.
That's it.
And it's out of your own as well, so you can set it up, or you can just like steal stuff out of other people's graveyards if they cast like good stuff that game so far. I just like it's very castable, it's very good. I don't know, but yeah, I definitely think it's worth toying around with, doing some brewing.
Yeah, for sure. Okay. I've got 2 on my list. I'm gonna cover one, and the last one I want to talk all of us because I feel like we all can talk about it.
Sure.
So the one I'm gonna talk about now is Zur. Zur was after Gitrog, Yisan, and Afenza was like the first time I was like, well, I should probably play blue, because initially when I got into Magic and CDH, I was like, blue is so complicated. You have to figure out how to counter spells, and then I thought counter spells were cringe. I was like, oh, I'm never gonna play that. And then this is before Baral and my awakening. But I was like, okay, I'll play something that's pretty good, has some interesting stuff going on, and kind of I'll figure out blue that way. I very much enjoyed my time playing Shimmer Zur. It's very cool. It also really kind of it was challenging, and this is something I think is kind of important and I like to do with decks, and the ones I find most interesting to like and start picking up are decks that I do find challenging. If a deck is challenging, it means you have something to learn and you're pushing yourself. So with Zur, it was the counter spells and then also Storm. Like I really didn't know. Like you with Shimmer Zur, you'd get a bunch of cards in hand, and you have to figure it out
from there.
Yeah.
And it was not particularly easy, especially pre-Oracle. You gotta do a lot of work to get there.
No, and it was cool. There was lots of room for innovation. Like one of my favorite pieces that I added to Shimmer Zur was a card that I picked up from Morgan, which is okay. Hold on, Morgan. Do you know the card I'm thinking of?
1 mana white instant.
No.
Yeah.
Wait.
Oh no, I know what it is.
Ancient Excavation.
Yes. Yeah. That card was so gas. So fucking gas. So for anyone who doesn't know, it's 2, a blue and a black, instant. Draw cards equal to the number of cards you have in hand, and then discard that many from your hand. So, I mean, Shimmer Zur would already do a bunch of stuff like you play Shimmer Mirror, and then you try and get out Scroll Rack and swap a bunch of cards to dig deeper, and like lots of fun stuff there. And I was like, okay, well, Ancient Excavation, I kind of don't even need Shimmer Mirror in play, and I can just see another 30 cards. And since then, like I'd stopped playing Shimmer Zur before we saw Battlethopter or I think I stopped right at Emergent. Emergent Zone, I think I'd stopped like right around then. And now now
we have like 3 or 4 more.
We've got 3 Shimmer Zurs, but most importantly now we've got Born Upon a Wind.
Yeah.
Which means you can kind of rethink the entire, like the Shimmer Zur package, and this is when I came up with the concept of the minimum effective package, because at the time, like it was so bloated. Like Shimmer Zur decks, everything was devoted. It's like, okay, I don't want to have my entire deck filled with all of these things. I want to be able to pivot. I want to be able to play like higher card quality. So I really started working on that idea of trying to like cut back and what is the bare amount, and that's really hard to do with a Storm deck. It's one thing with combo decks where you're like, well, I can actually cut this piece because I can have redundancy here. Where it's Storm, where something is about like there's a certain amount of
you're
things,
drawing
like
into all the pieces, and it's just like, well, if you don't have enough of them, you're just like not going to hit it enough of the time, like a good percentage of the time. Yeah,
and then like I put in the white instant to Scout's Warning to do flashing in Laboratory Maniac. Lots of very very fun stuff, but now with Born Upon a Wind, it's a chance to really reinvent the deck. Have a true minimum effective package with Shimmer. I mean, not even Shimmer, but just like an ability to win at instant speed with Necropotence, but also to really kind of move away and make that maybe not necessarily a plan A, make that maybe a plan B or C, because you don't need to commit as hard. I think that's the better way to do.
I think it's where a lot of Zur pilots are at now.
I just don't see, like, I don't know what the Zur meta is like right now, because to me, Zur is one of those commanders. Even back then, we talked about it being like, you know, or maybe not back then, but a couple of years ago, we even said like Zur is one of those decks that's probably still up there in terms of how the ceiling of how the commander is, but the one that people just overlook all the time because they don't want to play because it's boring or whatever.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's hasn't it like top 16 some stuff recently as well, or like I think there have at least been like 1 or 2.
Yeah, I'll check out their list,
like
because
decently high finishes.
Or you know what? Maybe I won't. Maybe I won't check out their list because I'm gonna do. I like to kind of make my own version first and then compare notes.
I remember, I don't know, because like I feel like I have an immediate visceral reaction to seeing deck lists a lot of the time of like either like, oh, I like this, or oh, I do not like this. And I feel like when I looked at those Zerd lists, I was just like, oh, I like these. They're like
nice,
doing some like really good card stuff, and like there's sort of Born Upon a Wind is like a good plan. It's sort of built toward taking advantage of that because we have a lot more fast mana now, but it's not like full in on that. It's just like, if I get a Necropotence in play, you're probably just going to be dead, but also I have all this other stuff going on.
And the other thing too with Zur is like, for the same reason, Thada Adel, like Zur has always been Rhystic Study in the command zone if you want it, right? Like Mystic Remora in the command zone, and those have been touted as being the best cards in the format, you know, for good reason. And to have that as your grind option while also having access to like a not a crazy fast win, but like a very, you know, just a win in the command zone that you can assemble like with necropotence. There's a lot of upside with Zur, and I'm
I think
I'm
the
interested in
actual-
going back to it.
I think the actual issue with Zur right now is that it's actually hilariously, roughly equivalently difficult to actually cast and resolve as Tivit. Because turns out Jewel Lotus is a pretty fucked up card in general for like getting your commander out on time, and like the 3 colors seem like far more of a gate at this point in time than the extra 2 mana. Like in comparison. So I don't know. Maybe there's a solution to like consistently casting your 4 mana 3 color commander on turn 2 or whatever, but I don't know.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know if you can reliably like I maybe you can try and reliably mulligan for that. I don't think I would. I'd go for the turn 3 set up a bit earlier. Maybe get like a
you just play like
lightning
Wandering
or something.
Ristic Study stuff at this point now, I think. But
but no, Zur is something I want to go back to. Kind of you can lean on stacks. There's also the one dream I've always wanted to live with Zur, and I don't know if this is going to be the time. Is the actually I can't remember the name of the card. The Pestilence for Snow Swamps.
Pestilence.
Dead of Winter?
Oh, right.
Something
No.
like that?
Dead of Winter is the 3 mana sorcery that does it. It's oh god, I don't even know.
Wait, sorry. What?
Dead of Winter is the Wrath. There's a Pestilence that does it instead.
It's a
There's
three mana
Pestilence.
enchantment. Yeah, but you can only activate as many times as you have Snow Swamps.
Yeah.
And it was something where I remember when Kaldheim came out and when you got the Snow Duels, I was like, maybe. But
Withering Wisps.
Yeah. This is a card where it's like, because one of the things Zur always you couldn't really get. I mean, and there's actually been even more tools since then too that you might not even need to dig into that well for board control, like creature control, because Zur would always, if you're turning Zur sideways to get an enchantment, you're getting beat to death. And I very much value the grind.
You can get the thing that exiles all the little stuff. Or
yeah.
I mean, Out of Time also hits Zur, which is unfortunate.
That's the problem with Out of Time. Yeah, I mean it's a
still
good
good,
emergency
though.
button, I suppose, but Zur is a card, and this is really what intrigues draws me to decks is there's a lot of possibilities and it supports a lot of different play styles, so I can really kind of tune it to exactly how I want. Give myself lots of options, and it's going to require work, right? It's going to require work to figure out how to squeeze everything in there and refine cards. That's very appealing to me, and so I think that's why I'm going to kind of go back to Zur. But who knows when that's going to be? Reed?
I guess last real one.
You should do the last 2. You do both of these, yeah.
So last one here is TNT, just because I'm not playing it really much at all right now. Played a whole lot of Sisay recently. I mean, in terms of how much I've been playing CH recently, which is not much. Turns out
the last one is CDH.
Turns out when Vintage Cube is on Magic Online, I lose a large percentage of my free time into that one, and almost all of that free time comes from playing CDH and other card games. Anyway, speaking of TNT, I played this one for a long time, and I wouldn't be surprised if I end up coming back to it eventually in the future again, but I don't know, this one, it's hard to talk about in this context on a podcast because it's just like, I don't know, this is like the entirety of me playing CDH for the most part, is like, at least in the modern format, is just me playing Thrasios and Tymna. It's usually always some form of like creature mid-range type thing, creature toolbox, because turns out I still stand by this. I think Tymna is still the most busted commander ever printed. And Thrasios is no slouch himself. 2 mana, 2 colors is pretty good, especially when you have like extra mana lying around. And creature decks tend to have a bit of extra mana lying around when you're playing a bunch of mana dorks and cradle and stuff. So it's all good in the command zone, and you have 4 colors, so you have a bunch of good stuff in 4 colors. And really, the only weakness is you don't got red. And it turns out Dockside and Breach are like insanely good, and like can't really pass them up at this point. So I don't know. It's one of those ones where it's like the reason I stopped playing is because it was my main tournament deck for a really long time, and now I just don't think it's super sustainable in the way that I like to play it as a tournament deck. which is sort of why I dropped it. But yeah, I don't know. It's like it's hard to explain, like talk about the full breadth of the versions of this deck because I've played it. I don't know. I played it for all the way from like initial versions of Flash Hulk, like sort of proto, like current versions of what I would have been, or like what I was playing by the time the Flash got banned, which is like versions including like usually Academy Rector, Sack Outlets, Pattern of Rebirth, Natural Order, that kind of stuff, along with Flash and Hulk, all the way up to again like Shuffle Hulk, Oracle Hulk, and then the entire time I was usually toying around with stuff like Paradox Engine or like testing out PSD styles of decks or like some other like bit more stormy, did a bit of hybrid testing with Razaketh during a bunch of those times. And then up to recently, like just toying around with post flash ban, post Benjamin ban type of TNT decks that I still think were like pretty good and probably are still pretty good, just like not the best thing in its class anymore. I don't know. Deck was good. Deck continues to be good. I think since Flash got banned, it's probably been slept on for like a very long time in comparison to how good it is. I think that it's also, I don't know, I'm not going to get too far into this, but I also think that like TNT is probably on the whole, I mean, it built as like a toolboxy style deck, which I think is just correct. I don't think it's really possible to play TNT and just be like, no, I'm not going to play the creature tutors and like at least a bit of a toolbox here, because that's like a ton of the strength. But I think those versions of the deck are like in aggregate some of the hardest decks to play in the format to their potential, to like milk the most out of. And I think that like it just slept on because of that, because it's at this point it's probably not, if you're getting into the format, it's probably not worth picking up TNT to be like, I'm going to get really good at this deck and play it. It's like playing Blue-White Control in Modern or whatever, sort of like a boomer style deck. But I do think it's like one of those ones that if you have sunk all of the hours in required to be good at it, it's just like insane the payouts that you get in comparison to like walking into it blind.
Yeah, I can agree to that.
And then
you played a fair share of TNT. If you want to give anything to say on that, as
yeah,
well.
but he still plays TNT.
Yeah.
That's the difference.
He's not. I do. I'm guilty as charged.
I think your versions of it are really like cool and pretty interesting in terms of advancing the way that the deck functions, though.
Yeah, I've tried a few different things. Despite having played TNT for years and played a lot of different versions, I still kind of felt like I was like not playing the Stax Cats deck well. Like I felt like I was like throwing games.
Yeah, I'm not sure anybody could play Stax Cat, like TNT Stax Cats correctly, like without like multiple months of hardcore practice, honestly.
But yeah, since I've switched to my more proactive version, I've been really happy and I'm quite successful with it too. So yeah, I do think like finding a version you're comfortable with is an important part of it and is not necessarily easy for a lot of people.
Okay, well, we've got the final one that we're going to talk about. And this one, we were kind of debating about pre-show, being like, was this one you didn't really play this much? Is this one that's really shaped you as a CDH
I'm just
player?
questioning
yes,
its impact on you as a CDH player,
yes,
but I think you came up with a good reason.
Yeah. And that is Cody. And we all have a very I mean, this is a good one to talk about for everyone, because it's one that we had a shared moment together, where we all took Cody to Tier 1 Con. We all suffered through testing, not whether or not playing it, but at least playing against it.
Yeah.
And it really shaped me in kind of realizing, like, not just that there's decks that I don't like, it's that, and I guess I could have said this a bit too with Anafenza, where Flash Hulk, there was a time where I was like, if there is Flash Hulk, like, and this is right before the ban, I was like, if there's Flash Hulk in the pod, I'm not going to be playing. Cody didn't get to that point, but it is one where it's like, yeah, there are decks where it just drains all the fun out of CDH for me. I don't like playing it. I don't like playing against it. I don't like seeing it. It's
Yeah,
it's a
it's just
miserable
stuff with
fucking deck.
horrendous play patterns. Yeah.
Yeah.
Which is sort of funny because, like, I do think there's still work to be done with Cody.
Oh,
And I
for
think,
sure.
like, especially with the release of Beseech the Mirror and the One Ring, there's like
Twiddle's
a bunch of interesting stuff.
Twiddle Cody vindicated. Finally, let's go.
I don't think so. I think you're probably supposed to play like the actual real Twiddles at this point, definitely. But like, I don't know. There's like some mid-range Cody thing probably with like tutoring for One Ring and like just having like a great secondary backup or whatever. But anyway, deck is just not worth testing to get to that point.
Yeah, exactly.
Unless they're a complete masochist and play with pods full of absolute masochists as well.
Do you have like? Does you winning the tournament create positive associations with this deck that override the negativity?
I look back on the deck fondly. That doesn't make me want to play it. I have an emotional attachment to it, sure, but it's not like it's not like that doesn't get immediately separated from like the actual like reality of like if I ever pick the deck up, it's just like I realize immediately what I'm getting into with it, and I'm just like I'm not sure that I want to do this.
Also, I we're far enough removed at this point. I think it's fine to talk about listeners. When Cody after the tournament, like we had very serious discussions about like mentioning this on the podcast, and like we were very concerned that like if this deck, because of the success and like if people started playing this regularly, that it would just ruin our enjoyment of the format. And that we're like, maybe we shouldn't mention this and talk about this deck a ton, but like for whatever reason, like people just do not play this deck.
No, it's because I did a lot of damage control on that deck. I'm sorry, I'm not sure if you've like listened to. I did a couple. I did at least the playing with power interview. I think I did. Might have done another content piece or something. Anyway, I did a lot of like very publicly talking about the deck not being fun to play and that you should be bringing it to like.
Look, I'm gonna give games. I know you did that. I don't think saying this deck isn't fun is gonna stop people from playing decks in a competitive format. I mean,
oh, absolutely.
Like Delver, like being okay. So people will gripe about Delver in Legacy. I mean, maybe, I don't know what the Legacy meta is right now. I don't think it's Delver centric. But like, in the past, there's like Delver sucks. Oh my god, we need to do something about Delver. Ban days, ban blah blah blah, ban this, and yet every turn would be 50% Delver. Like,
I'm not saying me doing like some amount of damage control on that front was like even the primary reason why that deck wasn't played. I would just say like I think I did my part, but also the reason why the deck didn't see play was because I think from a competitive standpoint, like bring it to tournaments, it definitely was one of those ones where like you can pants one tournament with it and then people sort of know what's up, and then like it gets a lot harder after that, like once people know what you're doing.
Yeah.
I think the deck's better than people think it is, even under duress, because like I think people still
we did a lot of testing, and there was a lot of 2v1s, 3v1s.
Overestimate how easy that deck is to stop, because you'd like I feel like the cultural zeitgeist around it is sort of like the same as Winota, where it's just like, oh yeah, you find like your one piece of removal and then that just like buys you infinite time, and then just like the deck can't grind, and then it's like, well,
and it's like, the deck has Oracle Consult ad nauseam, all these cards outside of Cody,
and also there are a lot of hands where sometimes the removal spell is fine, but you're also going to need 2 more pieces of interaction to actually have that thing resolve and then actually stop the Cody from winning. Like,
no, it's. I'm glad I do
think it's easy to stop when people know what's up. I think it's a bit harder to stop than people actually think. And you need to play a bit against it to like realize sort of that like people need to work together a bit on that front.
It's easy to stop in theory. It's sometimes hard to stop in practice in terms of like
especially
prisoner's dilemma kind of stuff.
Yeah, convincing the table to actually like do so.
No, I think we dodged a big bullet. Not having Cody become a massive annoying problem, but I'm
because at least stuff like Roxai and like the actual like turbo decks are they're like sort of interesting to play. You have to like actually think through your lines to a certain degree. I still don't think those decks are particularly fun to play, but you know,
Yeah.
there's like, you're not just like doing the exact same thing in the command zone every game, and you're not like mulliganing for hands that look exactly the same every game. It's like you got to work with what the game gives you a bit. And at least like playing against it, there's some uncertainty there a bit. And, you know you have to hold up interaction, but there's a game to be played.
Cool. Morgan, do you have anything to say about Cody?
No, I think we covered it off pretty well. Little funny, you know, just the concept of like we stopped playing it because we hated playing it.
Yeah.
But
Yeah, as the reason why, you know.
Cool.
I mean, I guess I would say, if we wanted to go a little deeper on that, I feel like it just kind of abstracted a lot of the gameplay away.
Yeah.
Like, to the point where you just, like, weren't actually playing a game anymore. It was just, like... It was, like, a check.
Yeah.
It was like, do you have the thing you need to not die?
Well, it was sort of
Cool.
a check on multiple levels, but yeah, it boils down to like a single level check.
But it was also
like
awful that it would...
Do you know what's going on here? Are you willing to do what's going on here? Does everybody follow along with like doing what needs to happen here?
Also, it was very annoying too that Reed would basically ruin the game by playing Cody, and then he would get stopped, and then he'd just go like dip and do. He'd be like, "Okay, I concede," and then I'm gonna go do something else. It's like you ruined this fucking game, and then you get to get out of it. Like that's fucking unfair.
I didn't do the concession that much. I did do a lot of, I don't have interaction in hands, I'm just going to tab out and watch streams while everybody else plays this game.
Yes, again, that's unfair. It's unfair that you could ruin the game for us and then just get to leave. And it was, just also the fact that, like, you stop Cody by basically doing a 3v1, and then it's like, is someone cheating? Are they holding back interaction? And then, let's say you all do work together to stop, and it's like, well, now this is like 3DH. Like, come on.
Yeah, there's no good outcome out of like Cody getting stopped. It's just like either we play Magic the way that none of us really signed up to play like Magic here, or like somebody else just gets to win because they held out or they like kept the correct random mulligan here.
Very toxic. Cool. It's time for everyone's favorite segment. Gut check.
Yeah, check.
Gut check.
Woohoo! Okay, so I didn't come up with one pre-show. Kind of came up with one mid-show, and it's gonna be inspired a bit by Reed. Gut check question is: which tier 2 or lower deck are you committing to play in a tournament this year?
Oh my god. I can't believe you came up with a gut check during the episode.
It's just a way to strong arm you into saying and picking a tier 2 or lower deck to take to a tournament. That's all this is.
I missed my Acererak commitment from last year, huh? I played Cole in a tournament though.
Did you played Cole?
Yeah.
Yeah, nice. I love Cole. Cole's a sick deck.
Cole's an awesome deck. I love Cole.
So is that you're gonna take Cole again this year? Or are you gonna mix it up?
I probably should mix it up, but I don't know what I'm bringing to a tournament if I am. I don't really want to bring Obnixilis. I don't know. Morgan, you come up with something, I'm gonna search through my backlog.
Well, going by Twitter discourse, I could just answer TNT.
Boy. Yeah, for me, I'm just gonna take that, I think.
So, okay, here's the thing. I don't necessarily want to make this commitment because I don't go to that many tournaments. Like,
yeah,
if
same.
I was playing in more of them, burning one wouldn't be so bad. But like, I commentate for Chaos, which means I don't play in those.
I was gonna say, yeah,
no,
we're Chaos one. Yeah.
We're bringing you to a Chaos. We're gonna do this all together. We're gonna show up all with our jank decks for one Chaos and just like,
fuck yeah, let's do it.
But
you
okay,
put side bets down on
assuming I
who gets
play
better
enough tournaments
breakers.
that I'm willing to do this, I think my answer will be Vatric.
Magic, yeah, that makes sense.
Love that answer. Reed, did you have a couple options?
Not really, dude. these decks all suck and I don't want to play them.
Yeah, no, because you're lame. That's why we're forcing you to do it.
I just haven't done brewing. Like where am I gonna commit to? This is gonna have to get edited out. Let's see.
I was gonna say we can just have this be a commitment, and you can just say Cole, and then you know what? In a month, you have to think of a real answer. Come back, we'll circle back.
I have to revise one. All right, we'll stick.
Or you know what? For the year in review, we'll announce it on the year in review. Let's
sure,
go.
Absolutely. Give me a week.
Okay. Okay, listeners, you heard that. Rita's gonna come up with one in 1 week, and he's gonna be sticking to it. Cool. You know what? Actually, and this is the way we can kind of get some listener interaction. On the gut check, throw on the Discord server. What tier 2 or lower deck do you think Reed should take to a tournament this year?
Also, if you want to join in, what are you gonna bring to it? What random deck are you gonna bring to a tournament? And it can't be one that you're already like playing / you main. It's gotta be some new one that you just like haven't ever touched before.
Let's all pick. Let's all just do this. Our listeners are us, and for one chaos tournament, and like just really mix up the meta. You know,
absolutely.
Just see how many like wonky off the wall decks we can get in a top 16. I want to see Ian's video of just like this top 16 had.
Okay, so listeners, I'm expecting your answers as well. Tell us what you're going to play on our Discord server. I'm looking forward to it. Well, that about wraps it up for this episode. If you guys would like to reach out to us with any questions, comments, or concerns, you can contact us on Twitter at IntoNorthPod, via our email northpodcast@gmail.com, or on our Discord server, the invite link for which can be found in the description for this episode. Extra special thanks to all of our patrons who help cover the expenses for our show and allow us to work towards improving the quality of the podcast. If you too would like to become a patron, we are at patreon.com/northpodcast. Thank you as always to the band Vox Cadre for our lovely podcast music, and to Nate Slover for our equally lovely podcast logo. Next episode will be out in 2 weeks. Well, actually, it'll be out in 1 week when we live stream it. Until then, see ya.
See ya.
Have a good one.
Well, I guess also if you're listening to this, it's going to be like in a couple days or later this week. But yeah.
That was a clean outro. Good job.
Bye.